This is
Positively Hygiene
with your host, Amber Lovatos,
Amy Prenti, and Angela Doe.
Listen on as we dive into the positive of dental hygiene. So my goal is to not work anymore. That would be no, just kidding. No, I mean, I love clinical. Like, I do love clinical. I love being with patients. But when I like putting it in the universe, when I have a baby, when like I go on maternity, I do want to work like part-time. And so I've been really trying to focus on growing like my Instagram and trying to like make money that way. And I know that like hygienists are always looking for like side gigs or things to do. And I think the three of us like do a variety of like different things. So we could, I don't know, like talk about like how we make our monies.
Yeah. I remember we spoke to somebody a couple years back and they're like, the average clinical life is like full-time clinical life is 7 years. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds so little. And then I think about it, I'm like, oh, that's true. Because that totally applied to me. Like, not that I went out of clinical, because I for me, that's important. But I just wanted, to reduce it a little bit because it can cause that mental and physical fatigue. So I started branching out with providing continuing education courses. So I had a goal after hygiene school to be hopefully to go back to dental hygiene program and teach. I got my master's in education in health science, but it doesn't fit my life right now. And Houston, right? It's a far commute as well. But doing continuing education courses is another form of teaching and another form of being able to provide the knowledge you have for other dental professionals. And it really started out with you, Amber. We won't, because it's sort of a long story.
It's a long story, yeah.
But Amber was a speaker first. And when in Texas, we have the law that passed in 2020 that all healthcare providers had to take a human trafficking prevention course and get their certificate for licensure and licensure renewal, there was a call out for presentations, especially in different healthcare professions. And so it's extensive, which it should be. And so Amber was looking for someone to help, be a part of that. And I said, pick me, I'll do it. Because human trafficking is a topic that's something I'm invested in. And it went from there. And then Amber was there to encourage me to talk about to spread my wings and share other topics that I knew and I wanted to educate on.
So what would you say, like, you don't have to just tell us how much you make as a speaker, but like, what's a range of how much people can make as speakers?
A range. I know there's people that are like really high up there, like the thousands, like a few thousands.
Yeah, perfect.
And it also depends on if you're a keynote speaker,
Yeah.
if you're doing a continuing education, like one program, what kind of platform you're on.
Like, is it virtual? Is it in person?
Yeah. Is it a national conference? How many people are in the audience? And then just really your name as well.
That's
if
true,
you're a big name and well respected, you're gonna get paid more. Which you should, because you bring value.
So I'll say I've heard people make like, when I started off, it was like $300 per like an hour and a half CE to like, I would say like now at my point, like $4,000 for like something in person where I have to travel there. But I hear people who make like 5-6 grand every single time, doesn't matter what they're doing. So I think there's like definitely like money to be made. I think, but like for like a virtual, like I think, would it be like too uncommon to get $1,000 for something hour and a half virtual lecture, which honestly is a pretty sweet deal. Like, yes, it's work. It is work, but it's a pretty sweet deal, especially like when you have your stuff developed. And I do like, it varies, right? Am I doing an hour? Am I doing an hour and a half? Am I doing 2 hours? Am I doing 3 hours of me speaking? It's like, it just like, or am I having to drive somewhere in my city? So my fees depend on like, am I doing this virtual? Am I doing it in person, but it's in my city? Okay. Am I doing it in person, but I can drive there? Like maybe it's in Texas. Or am I having to fly there and be away from home for multiple days?
Let's not forget the time that you flew to San Antonio, though, okay?
Oh my God. I did try to San Antonio. That was, yeah. This last time I just drove because no, don't fly to San Antonio. But yeah, so like it depends, but it can be something like pretty lucrative. What are some tips you would give somebody who wants to get into speaking?
Find what topic you want to talk about. And definitely, like, if I hear this a lot, like, oh, well, someone already speaks on my topic. I don't want to speak on it. It's like, no, not at all. I had someone approach me that was like, oh, like they're a pediatric hygienist as well. And they're like, I want to talk about it. But you already talk about it. And I'm like, please do you. We all have different experiences, different backgrounds, different things we can offer. And certainly, like, I know there's other people that speak about pediatric hygiene too. I can't reach to everybody. So it's like more people there are out there speaking on something, the more awareness we're going to bring, the more we can impact our patients and help dental professionals. So I think pick a topic you're interested in. Don't just pick like the fad thing, and know you're going to put the grunt work into it in the beginning. It sounds like, oh, okay, 1 hour. I'm just speaking for an hour and a half and making $1,000. Sweet, and it will be, but you have to do a lot of your research and putting the presentation together, and a lot of that work
There
in
is a
making
lot.
that $1,000
There's a
goes
lot of like
before.
investing in yourself. So like I'll say like
Yes.
I invested in somebody by making my speaker one page. It's like a resume, but it's for speakers, right? And getting professional headshots. Some people could hire like speaker coaches to teach you things like how to create an abstract, how to create a correct objectives. I would say that would be like my tip is people who don't know like how to write objectives. So there's this thing called you can just Google it. It's like Bloom's taxonomy, and it'll give you like a graph of action verbs, and it'll categorize them from like lower learning to higher learning. And so you want to make sure that the objectives that you are selecting are kind of a mixture of things. So if let's say we're going to talk to a hygienist about perio, it would say like the dental hygienist, the learner or the dental hygienist, the learner will be able to identify perio classifications. Identify being our verb. Identifying is something that's lower classification of learning. To be able to like pick A, B, C, that's easy. Versus the dental professional, the learner will be able to determine the dental classification in this case study or whatever. That's a poorly written objective, but that's determining something is a higher level of learning because you have to kind of like figure out or having to apply something, or the dental learner will have to analyze the perio classification. Well, analyzing something is harder than identifying something. But this graph makes it easy. You just like look at the graph and select verbs from these different categories. Making sure they're not all in the lower level of learning. You want them all to be like maybe a lower level, a middle level, a higher level of learning verbs that you're selecting to make your objectives. And these verbs are things that are measurable. So identifying, researching, analyzing, um, saying something like the dental learner will be able to look up. Well, that's not really like not truly measurable. So it's super simple. Just use that graph. When you're putting them in order, put them in order of lower level to higher level learning. You don't want to have like a middle level, lower level, higher level. You want to keep them like in order. Um, that would be like my tip because I think that that's something people like just don't know how to do. But I also think that's why people hire coaches to help them develop courses because you just don't know. How do people get paid?
How do people get paid? Good question. There are so I started speaking through associations, and some pay, some don't, or some give like a small honorarium. So to get paid, that's that was a challenge for me in the beginning. And in the beginning, you sort of like accept what you accept. I know in the beginning I didn't get paid much. I just took like what the association gave. But sometimes you can get sponsorships, which now that's where most of my payment is coming from. Partnering with companies that I believe in, and they see my value as well into being able to integrate and create a partnership with them. So that's one way. I know for like bigger conferences, sometimes they have like an upfront honorarium that's like non-negotiable. So there's that as well.
Amy, what's a side gig you do?
I would say I accidentally fell into the social media side. It all started, I just didn't, I enjoyed watching fashion bloggers and beauty bloggers and stuff on Instagram, but I knew that it was never anything I would do because I'm not passionate about fashion. I don't outfit myself. Um, but I was like, well, what can I do that I'm passionate about? And I was like, well, I'm just passionate about being a hygienist. So I think at the time, like social media, dental hygiene influencers wasn't a thing. It was before the pandemic. Um, I think maybe there's 5 or less at the time that I started. And I just started posting for fun. And then I found these handful of others while I was getting tossed into the same algorithm, just because they're like, okay, this girl now just keeps posting about teeth. So they were tossing me out with the other teeth people. And then it's really developed into something more than I didn't go into it with the idea of it becoming a side gig. I just wanted a creative outlet. And then all of a sudden I got emails from brands asking me to promote their products, like brands that I would use. And I remember just being dumbfounded. Like the first time I think it was with Colgate, and I had about 2,000 followers. And I was like, me? Like, they want me? Like, what? This is crazy. And then I did that. And then all of a sudden, just every couple of months, I would get an email from another major brand, and I was just shocked. And now I'm kind of really deciding, like, wow, this could be like something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of accidentally fell into it, but it's been really, really neat. And I actually was working Saturdays for the longest time, but now through developing my social media, have been able to replace working Saturdays, so which is my part-time job. I work Monday through Friday at my full-time office, and I would work every Saturday. And I've been able to replace a clinical day's pay 4 days a month with social media income, which makes me, yes, home to, like, better, I'm home a lot more, and I enjoy a lot more because I feel like I'm helping other hygienists. So it's just all around, it's a better fit for me. And I remember even when I told the office I work in on Saturdays, I said, I think I'm just kind of getting squished for time here. Like, I need more time to focus on social media. He even said to me, he goes, well, you're going to make a lot more money doing that. He's like, doing any labor. And then he said, even my position, he's like, you're going to make more than anything I would do in a day. He's like, so, like, go ahead and move forward. He's like, I think you're doing. Yeah. He was sad to see me go, and he tried to make it work, but at the same time, he's like, it's a smart decision.
So I've never gotten like emails randomly from social media, really, from gigs. So I do make a few $1,000s a month from social media every month. But really, it's been from like connections I've made with companies at conferences, where like I go, or they know me from like the speaker world, and so I connect with people who I already know. But sometimes all I do is like I go up to their booth and I'm like, hey, I'm the Latina RDH on Instagram. I have over 11,000 followers. I could have said I have over 11.5, but I reached 11.5 last night, and then I went back down to 11.4 this morning. But I tell them, I'm like, hey, like if you're interested in social media, like this is what I do, and it is kind of nice. That's kind of really been like my focus. I do a lot of speaking, but speaking requires travel a lot of the times. So really, my focus is like either doing something virtual, locally, but mostly social media. Like I mentioned in another episode that I'm going to hire a social media manager / agent who can help me hopefully get more gigs. I would love for like I teach general Spanish, so like Rosetta Stone, like hook me up, or Duolingo, hook me up. Like I feel like those types, right? Like how do I get in contact with them? I've seen Rosetta Stone sponsor Spanish-speaking dog. So I actually speak Spanish, right? Like I teach Spanish, So, but how do I go about doing that? I don't know how I go about reaching out to Rosetta Stone, right? So I'm gonna hire an agent and see what happens this year. And yeah, I think and social media can be like really actually it's work too, but it's also really fun. And I mean, I started making money probably at 2,000-ish followers, 2,500. I didn't have like that many followers.
Yeah, same.
And my first one was like for a nonprofit. It was for a water fluoridation initiative.
That's cool.
So yeah, it was cool. And now I've got some like pretty loyal companies that I work with, which I enjoy, and It does. It started off like just kind of for funs, and it is can be for fun.
That's the thing too. You can make it exactly what you want it to be. I know there's so many different hygiene influencers out there that, some will post this or post that. Like none of us are the same. Everyone
No.
is different, and you can take it. You can be. I know for me, it's big. I don't ever like to use sounds that have swears.
Oh, I don't either.
I just don't stand by profanity. My thing, I have a daughter, and she's of age where sooner or later, all of her friends are going to be on social media within the next 5 years. I don't need them finding material of her mom,
That's true.
cascading to some like profanic rap song. I don't know. I just don't. It's just not me. I don't know. I like to maintain professionalism, but you can make yourself a little controversial and edgy, and that's probably going to actually progress your page a little faster. But you got to keep in mind, what's
seeing
your motive? What's your end goal?
Well, I'll tell you, I work for Crestor OV and I do social media for them. I do a lot of, I'm their face of like the dental hygiene face for the Closing America Small Gap initiatives. They run like I think monthly reports on me. Like I think they have like Google alerts on me because one time there was an article that came out and they knew about it before I like knew I was like in a newspaper, before I knew about it because they do like these reports on me to make sure that I'm not like too out of line. Which like I understand, especially when like you're representing like such a huge brand and such a huge initiative, like they want to make sure they're not getting somebody who's like too controversial, right? Like I think you're free to do whatever you want to do, but consider that the dentistry is still very conservative, and so that might be like a con, I would say, is that yeah, sometimes they're like a little bit too conservative. They may not understand social media. Like right now I'm working with a new company who I think the great thing is they don't know anything about Instagram, they don't know anything about social media, and so everything I throw at them, they're like, oh my gosh, Amber, thank you so much. Like like all these things and really basic things. The con would be then you're setting the ground for like how much to compensate for, how much, especially if they're not working within like an agency. They don't know like what the going rates are, right? And so you're having to kind of teach them those things. So that's like kind of like a con. But social media can be really, really great. You get to meet a lot of people. I mean, that's how we not how we met, but how we met Amy.
Yes. Oh, yes. How? Yes.
Yeah. I'll see another side gig for me is I write. Do y'all write? I don't know, but
I started to.
RDH Magazine is a great one. Both of you are RDH Magazine influencers?
Oh, yes.
We're both
I'm not.
RCCs.
I'm not an RCC.
You were last year.
I was last year. I am not an RCC. No. I guess I'm not as popular as y'all. I'm just kidding. No,
You graduated. That's what.
I am on the advisory board, so I write for them. And then I try to recruit other people to write for them. So if you're interested in writing, like, let me know. I'll guide you. But RDH Magazine is a great one, not just because I'm on their advisory board, but they're a great one because they're actually one of the few dental magazines that does pay. They don't pay for every article, and they won't pay for opinion pieces. So, like, if I decided, like, I think I want to write a piece on, like, my IVF journey and stuff, and, like, infertility and those things, and if I'm just writing about, like, my journey and my experience, then you wouldn't necessarily get paid. But if you're writing a scientific piece, if I was writing about, like, the science of IVF and how that relates to dentistry and blah, 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 then, yes, they would typically pay depending on their budget for that month. But at one point, I had a monthly column with them and I think I made like $300 every single month. And what I did was I interviewed hygienists and like about their favorite products, and I would write about their products. And that's what I would do. And so I think they're really great. It's also great for like exposure. I actually had somebody who DM'd me this week who's like, so crazy. I saw you in a magazine this week, and then you came up on my feed.
Big brother.
I think it does like get you exposure in like maybe speaking or people who might follow you. Besides like the fact that you're also going to get like hopefully get compensated for it. And so now like I also add that to like my like resume of things. So like this last week or 2 weeks ago, I wrote an article for PacDent. I used a cordless hygiene pan piece, and they're like, "Hey, will you write an article?" It's not even for RDH Magazine; it's for a different company, or a different magazine. But they're going to pay me $300 to write this piece, and it's an opinion piece. It's not even a science piece, and those are like for me are easier to write.
Sure.
And something that's something like you can do from home, kind of
On your own time.
on my own time.
Yeah. I mean, you have a deadline, but
Yeah.
when you
At
want.
3 a.m. on
Yeah,
the day of the
that's
deadline.
you. I would be asleep at 3 a.m.
I think it's interesting too because I know a lot of us in school, we look up to faculty, and I think a lot of girls graduate saying, "One day I want to come back as an educator." I
That
think
was
that's a
me.
very common. Me too. And then
Yeah.
I think
I
though,
did it. I was
Yeah,
that
oh
you
year.
yes, you
actually did
did.
it.
But then
Yeah.
from what I've heard, and you've talked about this too, is a lot of times in certain, education systems, there's just a lot of politics,
It's a lot of
and that can
politics.
ruin it for
Yeah.
you. And that's how I see me being. I'm not someone that will step on other people to launch myself further. I'm never going to be that
Yeah.
person. So I picture myself being in, and this may or may not be true, but I picture myself being in a university teaching, and not ever being willing to step on someone and just staying stagnant. Whereas I feel like I have so much to offer that I do see myself, and I'm not there yet, but I do see myself going into writing and public speaking because I
We're
just
gonna
feel like I
get you
have
there.
this passion. Yeah,
We're
and
gonna get you there.
but I
Yeah.
think I can offer that same passion in school. My peers would say to me, I don't know what it is, Amy, but when you get up to the front of the class, I listen to your presentations. And they say, I zone out with the teachers, but I listen to you. And I think when you are passionate about something, like what you were saying, Angela, about finding
You have
what you
great,
want to speak about.
you have great analogies.
Oh, well, that's probably because I'm ridiculous.
No,
I don't,
I think
but,
yeah, it does make it easier to like listen to you because you have great
oh,
analogies.
well, I appreciate that. But yeah, and I think when you're just naturally passionate about something, you infect people with that same passion, and it like really draws them in. And I think that's so empowering to just feel like you're establishing that connection. And that's what I see coming from writing or public
Yeah.
speaking. I think it would come from students. I think that would be, oh my gosh, I would eat that up to be able to work with hygiene students. But I don't know if I want my fire put out
Yeah,
by like the
it's
uppers.
fun. Like I did a lecture recently for Low Star Dental Hygiene last week actually. I did like a 2-ish hour lecture and it was so nice. I was like, wow, I've really missed like being in front of students and like how appreciative they were of like everything I was saying and it is really nice. I feel like teaching is more of a like it can't be a side gig really.
Yeah.
I mean it kind of can I guess. One of our friends does works in teaching 1 day a week. And they actually pay, she's at a community college and they pay pretty well. When I was at the university level, they didn't pay very well. They paid like 32 an hour or something.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
yeah, they paid me with a bachelor's degree 60,000 a year working 5 days per week.
Oh my gosh. And how long
Yeah.
were the days?
I mean, long. I think we were 8 to like 4:30, 5.
So full day.
And lunch hours, every lunch hour, we had a meeting. But your work doesn't end when you leave work because you have classes to prepare for. You have great things to grade at the university level. Not to like discourage anybody, because I enjoy being that kind of person who does more. Doing, we had like rubrics to help us get to like the next level. I was an assistant professor. You want to get to be associate and then full professor. So that includes research, which I hate research. That's not my thing. Writing, publications. Speaking, community outreach, which I love, serving on committees, but committees also like require work. It was a lot of these other things that the university level like required of you if you ever wanted like promotions and growth, which I was good at, but it became a lot. It did. Versus when I worked, there was one community college that paid hardly anything too, but they didn't have any of those extra requirements. There's another one here in Houston that there's two, like I was the HCC and Lone Star pay pretty well to their faculty. Um, the hard part for some community colleges, I would say, is that they only pay you if you're a lecturer or a junior didactic course. They only pay you for like the hours that you're actively teaching. Versus when at the university level, I got office hours as a full-time faculty, and if I taught a class, I actually got office hours to help me prepare. It wasn't like enough, but I at least got something.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like pros and cons, the university level you got paid less, but also I learned so much. Like the networking was great. They taught me how to apply for scholarships and awards, and um, I just learned a lot. I had a lot of professional growth at the university. Um, the pay sucked, but like I did really enjoy it.
Now, did you teach a specific course?
Yeah, so I taught, I was clinic coordinator for the second year hygiene students. And so I taught practice management, which is the final semester. We basically teach like resume building, like getting out, like helping prepare you to get out to the real world. I taught clinic seminar 2. So we have like what we call pre-clinic, like that, what you're learning before you get into clinic, like your basics. And then you have like clinic seminar 1, and then clinic seminar 2. So we taught like, not perio because we have perio class, but just clinical things. So I taught clinical seminar 2 and 3. So in 2, I think we taught sealants, like the didactic portion of sealants. I don't know what else did I teach. We had like just like a variety of things. And I think I only had 3 courses really. I think I had like 1 each semester. When I first started, I was helping with like our intro to dental hygiene class, which was like the prevention class. So yeah, all things prevention, caries, risks, going into like schools, developing like kind of programs. The course I wanted was community. That's the
Oh,
course
yeah,
that
that
I
one.
wanted.
Yeah, well, that's
Right?
that's you.
But that wasn't my course.
That course is designed for you.
Yeah.
It's almost like Snape. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I know you don't know Harry Potter, but he
yeah.
wanted Defense of the Dark Arts, but he just never.
I never
got
got it. I never got it. No. And I was clinic coordinator, which clinic coordinator is a lot of work. We had 40 students in each class.
Wow.
So I had 40 second-year students, and I had to create their schedule. We had rotation schedules where they would go out to like different clinics around the city, not just like, so in our school we had like a perio department that had rotations in. They had like pediatrics that had rotations in, radiology rotation, but then they would also go like to San Jose Clinic. They would go to Sunnyside Clinic. They would go to, when I was in school, we would go to like the VA. So I had to manage the schedules between these other off-site rotations, which days they want students, how many days I can send there, making sure that all students have like equal opportunity at these different rotation sites. At least everybody's getting like 2 times in perio, 1 time at San Jose Clinic.
That's a lot.
It was, yeah.
That's a position just in itself.
Yeah.
Let alone taking on other.
Yeah, that's why I only had like 1 class per semester.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
So it's different. So you're educating, but it's a different form than picking a topic and just kind of.
So marking their attendance. If a student didn't show for a rotation or cancel for a rotation, trying to find their replacement. It was a full-time work. I mean, this whole conversation could be a whole like different episode. I did enjoy it though. I feel like I was good at my job. So, but I do feel like teaching is less of a side gig than a. Yeah.
No,
it's a commitment.
Yeah,
it's a commitment.
That's heavy duty.
It is fun.
And I know some people take on and want dental hygiene as a career choice because of the flexibility. I knew a hygienist where dental hygiene was actually sort of her side gig. She's an artist and that's her main thing, but sometimes that can't be as consistent. And so she dived into dental hygiene to be like a main form, at least some kind of constant income. So dental hygiene sort of ended up being her side gig. So I think it's great how flexible our occupation is. And I never thought I would go to dental hygiene school and then practice and then do side gigs. It all happened, and it sounds like it happened for you too, Amy, that it all developed very organically. Me being a CE speaker, and then for me, I dived into Instagram more as like a marketing tool for speaking, but also another outlet to bring my topic to dental professionals. I like it because so my first degree was in radio, television, film, and now I feel like I didn't absolutely waste it. Yes, the field has changed. Yes, social media is not quite the same as film, but it still brings that creativity and what I liked about it all tie in together along with education. So I'm like, okay, I don't feel like I wasted 4 years of my life. Yeah. It sort of came full circle. So I like to think now. At least it helps me to think that I use all my degrees for something.
I was thinking another thing that maybe like a side gig that's not like super hard would be like, not to like name drop anybody, but like there are ambassador links. Like Cloud Dentistry does one. Like if you like share your link of your Cloud Dentistry link, and you register with it, and then you fill a booking, I get $100. Like that's easy. You could do that on like social media, like just go around people asking about like temping or whatever, just give them and it doesn't even have to be Cloud Dentistry. There are other ones too.
I know Dental Hygiene Nation doesn't do it anymore, but I remember one time I shared my loop strap and I was just genuinely talking about it. And then I just put the link at the end just in case someone wanted to buy it. I woke up and I think I had 55 notifications of people
Nice.
buying it. And I made close to $100 just in like referral codes or
Does
whatever. I was like,
Tooth Life
wow.
still do it?
Yeah, Tooth Life still does
Tooth
it.
Life still does
Yeah.
it. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like nice. Um, like, but $100 for me to just like share a link, and I feel like for like the cloud one at least, you don't have to even have a social media like presence really. You could just like those Facebook groups, anybody can comment in those Facebook groups and just
Yeah.
like share a link. That's like super simple. But
Well,
they're and not necessarily just cloud dentistry, but I think there's like I think Quickly has one too. Although I love cloud, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean
trust
it depends on like yeah, we'd have to look up the different
Yeah.
like codes, but I would look into those.
Well, and there's some dental companies that they just want to find people to do lunch and learns in the area.
Oh
Yeah, so that's a good side gig too because you can, allot your schedule or it's during the lunchtime, and that's all you do is just lunch and learns. And I remember when I learned that because it was for a company and I had invited them to her office to do lunch and learn, and I was like so surprised, like that's all she does,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I would say I saw one recently. So if you're like interested in that, I would say follow those people on social media because a lot of times they'll post on social media like we have an opening for lunch and learns like person. Um, that's how I mean I would follow the companies online on social media who you like. Also like on LinkedIn. I actually talked to a hygienist recently. It's not like a side gig thing, but I talked to a hygienist who's now working for a loop company, and she told me she got that gig through LinkedIn. She didn't even have a significant social media following, but she was just like posting on LinkedIn and she got her job through that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think it's gonna work out. But you guys have significantly more following than I do. I think I tagged them once in one of my posts, and then they started like liking my stuff, and then following me recently, and then emailed me and asked for a partnership. So you never know,
No,
you
never
know.
know.
And then it's sort of weird because they're like, oh, I looked through your social media before you. You're like, oh, okay. Because at the same time, yes, that information's out there, but to know that they're looking at you
I know that is so
and making
weird.
sure, what you're displaying and your values align with theirs. It's sort of like you're being judged in a microscope.
Yeah, for sure. You can also do consulting. That's more, I think, like harder. But if you could really figure out like how to be a speaker, but you don't want to be a speaker, you can consult and coach people. There's this one. She's not a hygienist, but she does like coaching for dental professionals in business. And I heard she's really good. And I'm like, so if you're like really good with like advising people, like walking them through things. Right now, I'm doing some coaching for some dental companies on teaching them how to use social media. Like that could be some like side gigging. Um, like it's not like work every single day, but it's something here and there. That's how like I make a lot of my income. Is just like, oh, I do a little bit of social media, a little bit of speaking, a little bit of Questor OB, a little bit of like clinical work. It's just kind of
Like the exposure.
We
yeah.
we joke about when someone asks you like, "What do you do? What do you do
I
for a
don't
living,
know.
Amber?"
I don't know what to do.
It's like the easiest thing
It's
is to be like,
the
"I'm
easiest
self-employed.
and
I'm
the
an
hardest.
entrepreneur."
Yeah. This is also not as easier side gig, but I wrote a children's book. It's not it can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be expensive. So to publish a book on Amazon is free. It doesn't cost you anything. You pay like maybe $20 for like a barcode, and if your ISBN number, you can apply for free. I did end up buying a book of ISBN numbers only because the goal is to eventually write a second book. And so then that way the numbers go in order. So if my ISBN number ends in like one, the next one would be in two. Versus a free one, they just like generate a free random number. Amazon, the way Amazon does it is that when somebody buys your book off their website, they make the book, they print the book, they ship the book. And they take the fee from like whatever it is that you charged. And you can set your fee to be whatever. The expensive part was the art. The artwork for the book did cost me a couple $1,000s. But if you're an artist or you know somebody who's an artist who can like do it for you for on the cheapsies, then like it doesn't have to cost you really a whole lot of money to self-publish a book. And so now I like randomly will get royalty payments from this book. With our book though, our goal is really to like help other people. So we don't actually use that money. We don't keep the money. We use that money to like buy more books to give out to the community or to give to other dental hygienists who are doing outreach work. But it's been a way for me to like make money and like
Passively.
to passively make money without even thinking about it. And I think about like if I was making it for profit and if I was like, actively promoting it, I feel like I could make a decent amount of money from that.
And even piggybacking off of that creative outlook, if you enjoy a hobby, tons of girls I know have Etsy shops of like all tooth gear and
Yes,
stuff. It's
yeah.
not just like the big names anymore. There's a lot of, girls that are just doing either decal stickers or, what have you.
Keychains,
Yeah.
t-shirts, doing their
I
own
mean,
designs. That's true.
Get invested in your passions. I used to love like cricketing and making pop sockets and stuff for fun. I wasn't like ever actually good at any of those things, but they can be fun, and there's some really creative people out there.
Yeah.
Like I know there's a hygienist who reached out to me kind of recently who's like made a tooth purse and she wants me to like help her promote it, and I keep forgetting to respond back. I'm so bad at like responding to people, but yeah. Anything else we could recommend for people?
I think that was it. So the dental educators, speaking, writing, lunch and learns, craftsmanship.
Oh, we talked about social media and our social medias, but you can also make content for companies too. So it doesn't have to be on your page, but you can help companies make their content for them.
Yeah. So if you can make like user generated content or UGC. So that is like, you don't even have to necessarily have a following for that, but if you feel like you're creative, I think a really good example of that would be American Eagle's page or Young's page. If you look, they have like very clinical like videos. So they have but you don't know who the hygienist is, right? So that's a hygienist who makes these videos, who doesn't necessarily have a social media following, but is good at like creating videos and editing. So she makes those videos for Young, and they pay her to make those videos. So that could be a way, and that's kind of like what I put now in my in some of my deals. Like, hey, like, okay, we'll do one social media post per month on my page for X amount of money, and you want to pay me a few extra $100, then I'll make you a UGC video specifically just for your page. And a lot of times these dental companies really need that. They need these videos where like are clinical, because they don't have access to a clinic. They're like they're working in office buildings. So you don't necessarily have to have like a social media following to do those things. You can just have, if you're creative enough, have an iPhone,
and a lunch break and access to dental.
And a lunch break, and access to a dental clinic, for sure. Well, we hope that these tips, these side gigs were useful. If you like end up doing some of these or have some of your own side gigs that you want to share with us, let us know, reach out to us. And if not, we'll see you and listen to you. Hopefully you'll be listening to us next week. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Positively Hygiene.
Join us every Tuesday for a new episode.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram for the opportunity for how you can contribute to our podcast.
And follow and review Positively Hygiene on Apple and Spotify podcast.